Welcome to a webinar about the results of the study Trans Labor Market Wallet. This webinar is about recruitment and transition in workplace. We have in earlier webinars heard about trans people often being outside the labor market. But what about the opportunities to enter the labor market? What are the opportunities for trans people in the recruitment process? Earlier research in Sweden does show that trans people are exposed to discrimination when applying for jobs. We have looked at other issues in the area, but we see a similar pattern. 10% did experience negative treatment or discrimination due to their trans identity during recruitment process. And you might say that's not so bad, but when you dig into the numbers, you can see it's actually 16% of the ones that come so far in the process, the light blue part of the diagram. The purple part are the ones that said they did not get discriminated, and the yellow never got that far in the process. So there is a problem in recruitment. During the job interview, an employer explicitly said that it could be a social problem in the workplace that I was transsexual. This was the free text answer from the survey. An example of a rather direct negative treatment, the possible future employee are seen as a problem only because they are trans. It's not the workplace, the colleagues, or the leadership that are seen as the problem, but a trans person who just wants a job. And when we asked about other problems during recruitment, it showed they did exist. It looks like there are structural problems from trans people in the recruitment process. Around 1/3, that's purple part of the diagram, had experienced other problems than negative treatment during the recruitment process. The most common was not applying for the job because they didn't feel included. It makes us reflect on the cis norm. Trans people are not normatively speaking welcomed in society. So, could there be a need for employers who clearly signal in some way that they do welcome trans people, counter the insecurity of trans applicants? Dig deeper into those problems, we see that in addition to not feeling included and therefore not applying for the job, the more common problems are difficulties filling in the correct gender because you're non-binary, problems with references and qualifications, and getting your gender identity questioned by the recruiter. So the barriers to recruitment for trans people seems to be about more than just negative recruiters. It appears to be a structural problem all the way. And these structural problems might show in our qualitative material in form of how trans people feel about recruitment processes. It was very clear in our free text answers that fear, worry, and anxiety were common feelings about recruitment. It's not unbelievable to think that there might be connection with the problems we see in our quantitative material, but we haven't asked questions about it, so we can't know. I think these quotes say a lot, though, about being trans, unemployed, and trying to get a job. It's anxiety-inducing not knowing if I should tell anyone that I'm trans, and if so, when. The employer got hold of old registry information from a previous job I had in the same municipality many years ago, so I was forced to come out during the interview. I'm worried about how previous employers will react if I leave them as a reference. For example, if they will misgender me in conversation with recruiters, and if then need to explain myself or will be seen as deviant by the recruiter. So our conclusions are There are factors that disadvantage trans people in the recruitment process. Both problem with negative treatment in the actual meeting with recruiters, but also structural problems. Probably contribute to the fear, worry, and anxiety that many trans people seem to feel about recruitment. From recruitment, we go on to transition in workplace. Transition is the process a trans person goes through to change their social gender, gender expression, and possibly their body and legal gender to make it better match the person's gender identity. We can see that 42% have at some point gone through transition at work. So why are there not more? It's not that strange. Some transitioned when they were not employed. That's more common among younger trans people. That's also largely the reason to why we see more transition at work in Sweden compared to Finland. And some have not transitioned at all yet, and some transitioned before they got their first job. That is also more common among younger trans people. If you have already listened to the webinar about discrimination and harassments, you heard that the most common response to a report of harassment was that they have tried to provide support but were unsuccessful. When it comes to transition, the response is better. As many as 70% say they always or sometimes received good support during their transition. This is really good news. We saw no clear difference in the support they received based on country, assigned gender at birth, or age. According to our qualitative material, the poorer support from the union may be due to lack of union club or no need for such support, so it's not that much to worry about. We also saw that support from colleagues was important. So the support is often good, but still there are 1/3 that leaves workplace during transition. The most common reason is that they felt too unwell to work at the moment. It's the third bar from the right. It is good to understand that we don't know why they feel unwell. It doesn't need to say anything about the workplace itself. Also, it is common to leave for studies or the desire for a new job or because people knew you in your old gender. You want a new start. That's the two bars to the left and fourth from the left. But then we have the more negative reasons. Around 25% leave because of poor working conditions. Their gender identity are not respected, or the workplace feels hostile against trans people. And around 70% leave because of harassment and violence. And 34 individuals were laid off during transition. We don't know the reason to why they got laid off, but we don't want to stress that it's very stressful being laid off during transition. Also, we can see a possible correlation between transition, in form of gender affirming treatment and change of legal gender, and work on capacity to work. Because there is a higher degree of capacity to work for those who got gender affirming treatment. You can see the purple bar at the bottom of the left diagram is longer. There is a lower degree of no capacity to work for those who waited a shorter time to change legal gender, as shown by the shorter yellow bars in the three bottom bars in the diagram to the right. To have to wait more than 5 years to change legal gender seems to affect the capacity to work. We did also looked into openness and found a lot of interesting things, but no patterns. About half say they are very or somewhat open at the workplace. But the effects of openness vary a lot. So we can't say, for example, that the people that chose to be open have a better situation. And of course, going through transition at work often means being open at some point in the workplace. To be or not to be open, that is for That is for real a serious issue for many trans people. And we have no answers. It is in our qualitative material we see these thoughts about openness and transition. A transition can mean forced openness and visibility, and that means worry, stress, and less work capacity. We also saw that outspoken and clear support is positive, both from colleagues, managers, and other LGBT employees. They are also clear that transition is central to the situation in labour market. Also, it was clear that gender affirming care, medical transition, is central for being able to live as oneself, which is another key factor. So, our conclusions about transitions are many trans persons go through transitions at work. The majority get good support, at least to some part. It is not uncommon to leave your workplace during transition, but it does not have to do with poor working environment. Sometimes it has to do with poor working environment. Harassment and violence during transition do happen. Good support during transition is important. Thank you for listening. Now you can continue and take part in the other webinars about trans labor market wallet.